even get to the problem of are we messaging things correctly if it turns out nobody's finding your message at all, and just putting things on in Spanish might not be doing the trick, and that's why I think it's got big implications. So these pollsters could make a small fortune probably, and they probably do, consulting with traditional media and talking to them about where is your audience. So you can put all the Spanish content you want on your traditional airwaves. Are they going to see it?
Absolutely. And so you stop calling them pollsters, you start calling them marketers, and there you have it, and there's a huge industry. Ta-da. And so a lot of the pollsters are marketers, and a lot of the marketers are pollsters. And so you have a GfK polling for AP, or you have Ipsos voting polling for Reuters. But in fact, these are giant marketing agencies who hone their skills of trying to collect information in the commercial markets to find out exactly those questions. That's how they get good at what they do, and that's why they were such good pollsters when it came to looking at the electorate. So a lot of this all kind of blends together. Meanwhile, while that's all happening, and you're quite right, the reason to look back is that it helps us look forward. And so if we know what the Republicans were missing in 2012, it gives us a clue as to how clueless they are in 2013 when they try to do immigration reform, and when they tried to do hearings that are completely built around Benghazi, as if anybody cares except them. And it helps put that in perspective. So while you have all of this going on, there's a completely different but interesting, intriguing parallel article here in the National Journal today from Ron Fournier, who I love to make fun of sometimes, but actually when he goes out and does reporting, gives us some good stuff. And today's article is entitled, Republican Leaders Worry the Party Could Divide in Two. And we know that the Tea Party faction and the Karl Rove more traditional money faction, the Wall Street faction, don't necessarily get along. We've talked about the Republican Civil War for some time. But the reason this particular article brings it down is speaking to various and sundry consultants who they name. This isn't just unnamed people.
Important.
Someone said, like they do on Fox News, this is actual reporting. And the gist of the article is a lot of the Republican traditionalists are worried about a Rand Paul candidacy. They figure that he will take his father's network, which are a little kooky to begin with, and walk and run third party for president because he figures he could be president. He's at least as smart as any of these other idiots. And he's not going to play the traditional game of waiting. And if he does that, what are the implications for not only the 2016 election, but the future of the Republican Party? Is it possible that, in fact, that the two-party system is a lot further toward chaos than people assume, even people like us who love to talk about it assume?
Yeah, maybe so. I suppose you have to consider it a realistic possibility that the Republican Party could divide in two, given that, you have two separate responses to the State of the Union address for years now, several years running. There's a faction of the Republican Party, and as much as they try to pretend they're independent, the Tea Party folks are Republicans, and pretty much that's it. And they may split off, but that's where they line up in a two-party system. And what's something as official as response to State of the Union, these guys still for years have insisted that they want something separate for themselves.
Right. So in Lincoln X terms, you have the Democrats, the Republicans, and the radical Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
And the radical Republicans are different, and they don't necessarily agree or vote with the regular Republicans. And could they split, and could they form a third party? And the answer is, yeah, they could. This is something that's kind of unthinkable in that we may say, all right, well, you got Ross Perot and other nutcases that go off on their own, but it's a personality cult. This is a little different. This is something that's been brewing for a long time. We've all seen it. You've pointed out quite accurately that they even have their own State of the Union channel, and they have their own think tanks now because Jim DeMint left, and where'd he go? Heritage or one of those places. Right. So now they have access to sort of the cachet of intellectual heft, if you consider Jim DeMint intellectual heft. But the point is that there's a whole network of well-funded organs that can help support the concept that, this is a third party. And rather than have the Republican Party evolve into the Tea Party and everybody else just have to suck it up and live with it could split.
It could. I'm looking at the article that you sent here. The photo that goes with it is fantastic. What a great look on Jim DeMint's face looking at Rand Paul. It doesn't look exactly like the two of them are on the same page in this photo. But it's certainly very interesting. Rand Paul appears to be droning on. He's certainly unaware of what DeMint is doing. DeMint is giving him the side eye like you can't believe. But they could very well find themselves on the same page when it comes to splitting things off. And it's entirely, I'm wondering if there's some kind of parallel here as I was thinking about what you were telling me about reaching minority populations, non-white minority populations through social media. And the Tea Party sort of has its own media of sorts, too. I think it's organized a little bit differently, but it definitely reaches the different nodes of the Tea Party side of things. They definitely reach one another through non-traditional media. And, it's an important parallel. They've certainly consolidated their thinking, such as it is, and shared it with one another through non-traditional channels to the point where they're getting televised speeches and people are paying attention to them, even as the conservative Republicans now try to put that fire out. They're able to keep it going, and they've got infrastructure that will keep it going. It's interesting to me that they...
It is interesting. They've always done, of course, a good job with direct mail, the Richard Viguerie branch of the party. And of all the different ways, looking back at that McInturf polling memo, of all the different ways where the Democrats lead in terms of I contact you and you remember that I did so, that's good for me. And that 21 point that the Democrats had among the 18 to 34-year-olds with social media and email, the only specific thing that Republicans led on is mail. And they had a 4-point lead there. So that's part of that other node. But completely different, and I can't help but chuckle because I was reading separately an article about Japan. And Japan has an aging society, and the Japanese are wedded to the fax machine and won't give it up. And this comes for a variety of reasons, including the fact that the Japanese language is, written language is complex enough so the keyboards never really work terribly well because you have too many characters, 2,000 characters. Yeah. And they prefer to handwrite messages and then fax them. And this was the story of a small business that does delivery of lunches. And they tried to switch from fax in your order to put it online or send us an email. And their business nearly dropped by a third. Everybody in Japan still uses fax machines. That's what they like. They're comfortable with. And the aging population in the country that innovated all of this technology refuses to give up their 8-tracks and refuses to give up, their handheld cameras, non-digital cameras.
Oh, really?
Because they're used to it, they like it, and that's what they do. And I just had this vision as you were speaking of the Tea Party, they use faxes. That's what they do, right? Everybody else is using email and social media and smartphones, and they fax each other because they're different and they're older, and that's what they're comfortable with, and that's what they do.
Well,
and their equivalent to that is, of course, direct email.
Yes.
Direct mail.
Yeah, and they do a lot of that, and that's a lot where their success lies. To the extent that they are digital, chain emails are still huge with these guys, but I mean, it's still sort of primitive application of the technology. Right. And it was very interesting. And what an interesting observation on the Japanese too. I wonder, but see, now there's still room to innovate. First of all, there's always money to be made in retro stuff. But yeah, I wonder if if the Japanese come up with some sort of wristwatch-based fax, then we'll really, then they'll survive into the future with that technology that could actually work. And it probably works well for the format of their characters and writing. Just one long strip of paper coming out of your wrist over and over.
Well, again, it brings up the issue of what you do with an aging party.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with the Republicans, and it's something that they're going to have to deal with. So that's my package for today. A little of this, a little of that, kind of all blended together. Some interesting data. And we'll talk about this and some other things tomorrow. I'm sure other things will pop up. This is Greg Dworkin. I'm speaking with David Waldman, otherwise known as Kagro. It is the morning, so this is the Kagro in the Morning Show. And I'll be delighted to join you again on Friday. I don't know if you have any other mystery guests on Friday. Sometimes you do.
It's a mystery to me.
I'll just drone on.
All right, I can accept that. That will be great. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone there. Enjoy yourselves. Thanks for coming by, Greg. And we'll speak to you tomorrow.
I'm going to do something really funny today. Not funny, but fun. I'm going to arrange at my office to have a barbershop quartet come in and sing some Valentine songs.
Okay.
Only because that's not something we usually do.
No, that'll be out of the ordinary. Okay, well, record that, and you can bring us an MP3. See, very, very savvy tech-wise. We'll play it on the air.
I heard these guys, and they're actually very good, so it's going to be a lot of fun. I'll tell you how that goes tomorrow.
Okay, very good. Thanks again, Greg. Talk to you tomorrow. Barbershop Quartet. I haven't heard that in a while. Barbershop Quartet's big in Japan? I wonder. We'll find out. We'll see how that one goes. That's an interesting activity for the day. And maybe an Elvis impersonator would be something we could do around here, although that would just be me sending it to myself, because it's kind of a lonely office here. But it cuts down on the likelihood of office workplace shootings, so that's good news. Everything comes back to the guns. What can I tell you? The one last thing, by the way, that occurred to me in this discussion I thought was interesting. Maybe this overarches lots of things. Maybe we'll pull together a lot of the elements of what we were talking about. Make it last all through the show here. But interesting, I think, the parallel between organizing Tea Party splitters, essentially, on the Republican side with non-white minority voting populations on the Democratic side. Of course, the idea on the Democratic side is to bring them into the fold, find them where they live and bring them in. And on the flip side, on the Republican side is, I guess you're still finding them where they live, but you're taking them out, which is interesting. So which will work better? I don't know. I mean, it may very well, it certainly could yet turn out to be the case that the carcasses of both established parties are rotting out and everybody needs to jump ship, but it may very well be, that you can reinvigorate a Democratic Party with new blood and keep it going, whereas the Republican Party can't do that. I mean, for one thing, they're ideologically opposed to new blood. I mean, literally. Build the dang fence, keep the immigrants out, young people suck, don't let them vote, close down the universities, whatever. That's not likely to work out for you. But so I guess it stands to reason that the exclusionary model translates into what they're going to do with their malcontents, or those people who have been stuck on the outside. I call them malcontents, but that's not fair because, and it has no parallel. It wouldn't make any sense to refer to the Democratic voting non-traditional constituencies as malcontents. They may very well not be contented, but that's not the same thing as being a malcontent. So it's conclusory, the term, and it's probably unfair, but there are a lot of people who feel excluded from the mainstream in both parties. But it certainly does feel like those laboring under that problem on the Republican side are more curmudgeonly, let's say. So I guess that maybe that's the difference. Maybe it's demographics, maybe it's age. If you're an outsider and old, you react to things differently than being an outsider who's young. An outsider who's young may yet see his way to the inside or change what defines being on the inside, whereas, perhaps maybe an older outsider, more stuck in their ways, maybe resigned to outsider status, might be able to improve their lot a little bit by joining up with other outsiders, but maybe not quite as interested in prying their way in to the mainstream. It may just not be available to them. They may have had experience with it and just found it lacking. I'm not sure exactly what motivates it, but it's real interesting to think about. It's also interesting to think about the marketing implications for this. I talked with Greg briefly about the idea that pollsters are marketers, and marketers are pollsters, and they can do the same sort of work, and they look at the same sort of phenomena. Interesting, though, that Democrats have reached out to the base, or who could potentially replenish their base, by reaching them where they live with messages that resonate with them, as opposed to trying to hammer them into the existing structure, which doesn't seem to work very well. But interesting as an observation on market theory. I mean, of course, if you think to traditional Republicans and traditional conservatives who are always banging the drum about market forces, and you can't pick winners and losers, and the market knows best, and the market will tell you what to do. The market is telling you to find new voters. The market is telling you to find them where they live. The market is telling you to find them with a message that means something to them. And it's Democrats who are doing it, and Republicans who are not. And it's very interesting. I think that's telling, especially when this time around the Republican candidate for president, you all remember that guy, Mitt Romney, running on his business acumen, his understanding of the markets. And it was socialist, Marxist, Kenyan Muslim Obama who didn't understand markets, who didn't understand how free enterprise really worked. Well, he was able to identify untapped markets and reach them and make them customers, in a sense, and win the election. Whereas Mitt Romney, business genius, was unable to talk to anyone beyond his existing market, unable to interest anyone in his product beyond dedicated consumers, longtime buyers of his product, essentially, and was able to crack no new sales frontiers, so to speak. So, draw a lesson from that. Not only was he not reaching the populations, he wasn't availing himself of new technologies that made it possible to reach them, and were the only ones possible through which it was plausible to reach them. I mean, there are apparently vast sections of the population who cannot be reached by buying advertisements on the major networks, or even on cable, or micro-targeting, all you want. But, if they're not watching television, and why would they be? It isn't in their language. It's just not going to work. Does it work to take the message that you wrote for Anglos, right? Your everyday mainstream white audience, the traditional audience, and simply translate it, run it through the translation machine into Spanish? Well, no, probably not. I mean, there's a lot of similarity between the populations, and we all in some way want much of the same things, but it's not just we want the same things and have different words for them. There are some differences, and some things that matter to a Spanish-speaking population and some things that don't. And by the way, it probably doesn't make a great deal of sense to write Mexicans Go Home in Spanish and then broadcast that on the Spanish channel. That's probably not going to work. I'm sure they softened their message somewhat there. But there's also the problem of, geez, are these populations completely blind to what's going on and very stupid? Maybe we could lie to them and say that they'll never figure out that in English we're saying Mexicans Go Home, but in Spanish we're saying, welcome, brothers and sisters, we're the land of opportunity, because they can figure out what the rest of us are saying, or what you guys are saying, I should say, on your English-speaking channels. I don't think they're quite that closed off. They may do all their communicating in different channels, and you might interpret that as isolation because you don't understand it when you hear it, and you don't see it because you're not even on those media, but that doesn't mean that they don't understand you. So let's watch out for that, shall we? Or let's not. Let's not have you guys watch out for that. Let's leave that to us. This side, the Democratic side, seems to be doing the marketing research that's necessary to bring in new customers. The Republican side not. And not only that, but they seem to be dividing themselves into 2 or 3 new subsidiaries. So interesting, terrific, wonderful. Keep it up. Keep going. Keep screwing things up. Keep thinking you're going to win. Keep unskewing your polls. I shouldn't stand in your way. Oh, okay. So Greg has sent me, by the way, some nice links to some good barbershop quartet stuff. YouTube's that'll play. We'll save it for after the show, unless you guys would really love to hear some barbershop quartet music. Why barbershop? Were people doing a lot of singing in barbershops at one point that they weren't doing elsewhere? I don't know what's the origin of barbershop quartet. I probably will not find the answer to that unless I go to Wikipedia for it. Or we could take phone calls. Do you know why they call it barbershop quartet? Would you care to share why they call it barbershop quartet on the air? Call us at 617-500-7147. 617-500-7147, extension 14. And we'll put you on the air, and you can tell us why it's called Barbershop Quartet. Or you can email us. You can fax us if you're listening in Japan, and there are a few of you, as it turns out, who are listening in Japan. You can't. Well, I don't know where you would fax us to, but what the hell? Go for it. Fax. I'm sure someone will get me the message somehow. Twitter, the fax of today for all us young people. Probably not. I wonder if really young people are organizing on some sort of parallel Twitter world. I don't know. I can't keep up with the young kids these days. Other people who can't keep up with anybody, the NRA. The NRA. Okay, I'm sorry. We interrupt this broadcast for this following announcement. Barbershop quartets originated with African American men socializing in barbershops. They would harmonize while waiting their turn, vocalizing in spirituals, folk songs, and popular songs, according to Wikipedia, which is amazing because every time I see a barbershop quartet, they are most definitely white guys. But I guess that's just part of the culture that we appropriated, and, I think we may have changed things a little bit there. But I guess maybe that was the social media rage of the day, and white guys said, we got to get into this barbershop singing thing and sing our own songs. And, I don't know. I mean, I that makes sense to me. And I'm aware of all barbershop's traditions, like internet traditions, and the importance of the barbershop in the African-American community. And I just didn't make the connection because it seems so white now. But, okay, I can see the roots reaching back. So, speaking of out-of-touch white guys, like myself, the NRA, more out of touch than ever. And doesn't even matter because purveyors of false equivalence and the cult of bipartisanship, and as well as the cult of pox on both their houses, these things seem to somehow go hand in hand. We need bipartisanship. We need both parties to come together. Both parties which suck equally, and a pox on both of them, come together. You know what you get when a pox plus another pox? Usually things get worse. I don't know. I mean, to me, mixing your poxes doesn't seem like a solution. But maybe that's why we've never gotten anywhere. Somehow, again, our media culture is dominated by the idea that if we take two parties which are terrible and force them to work together, the result will be awesome. I don't know. We'll see. Oh, look, Greg adds, later, white minstrel singers adopted the style, and in the early days of the recording industry, their performances were recorded and sold. Aha! See, so the white guys made money from it, and that's how it became a white industry. Well, okay. And Mark, thank you for weighing in. Mark tells me that Anton, his uncle, used to be in a barbershop quartet. He's on vinyl, too, and very white, and I can imagine that. I know Anton. So, wow. Okay, well, look, barbershop quartet. It's a phenomenon. We're into it. It's very interesting. I hope this goes well for you, Greg, and that everyone is pleasantly surprised and gets a history lesson as well. Well, now you're going to be able to add that. So, the out-of-touch white folks over at the NRA have helped us out a little bit by getting even more out of touch. And this relates to the punditry being out of touch in a certain way. This morning, we'll save this for after. First, I'll relate it back to the punditry. First, I want to read you this thing. I have it published here in the Daily Caller, which is a terrible publication, chiefly because it has something to do with, it had been started by Tucker Carlson, who's a terrible publisher. So no surprise that his publication is terrible. He's one of the worst people in the punditry, period. He's just a dick from top to bottom. He's rude. and obnoxious, which I also am, but he's also wrong, which I'm not, and that's, or on fewer occasions. Plus, he's just personally obnoxious. My favorite personal story about him was, I think, the time that he went to a video rental store. This was years ago. You can tell by the fact that there were video rental stores. But he went to his local rental store, and I don't know, I guess the clerk behind the counter recognized him because he was that dick with the bow tie from television. And I don't know, he made some comment or gave some indication that somehow he thought the general public would have some interest in what Tucker was renting movie-wise. I can't imagine why that would be the case. But and it is an intrusion on his privacy, to be sure, and he had a right to be upset about the fact that somebody was thinking of revealing this information. I have to look up the story and try and get the details on it, but the way he handled it was really incredible and incredibly dickish. But even more to the point, that the point being that Tucker Carlson is a dick, I'm thinking of the way he handled the stories of the personal injury lawsuits that John Edwards had handled. Now, John Edwards, of course, since discredited, to say the very least, on his personal life, but that doesn't seem, to me, it doesn't impact the way he handled these particular cases. But he had written a book, I guess, in preparation for his run for president way back when he was still a viable candidate, and discussed some of the biggest lawsuit cases that he had handled. And one of them, of course, was the story of some kids who had been injured in swimming pools, wading pools built for kids, at public or private club swimming pools. And the injuries were horrific, and the, really negligence involved in the way these things were constructed made a great case. But you remember these cases? They're talking about kids who accidentally sat down on top of the filtration systems in wading pools and got stuck, to the suction, to the vacuum pump part of the filtration system, and actually literally had their insides sucked out of them through their bottom. I mean, it's the most horrific thing you can imagine. And he pressed the cases against the manufacturers and said, this stuff is outrageously dangerous. And it happened with some frequency, and there was no attempt to mitigate this, et cetera, et cetera. And I think, so we're talking about these terrible injuries that in some cases killed children, and totally preventable with a little bit of retrofitting, and the company was refusing to do it apparently. But Tucker Carlson, of course, characterized this stuff on television by saying that John Edwards was a huckster lawyer who represented people, got them multi-million-dollar settlements for jacuzzi accidents, which, let's say understated the case a little bit. Well, anyway, that's all a diversion from the fact that he's now terrible in the form of publishing the Daily Caller. And how terrible? Terrible enough to publish an op-ed from Wayne LaPierre, as you know, CEO of the NRA. And I haven't read this yet, except I saw yesterday and today everybody just, falling all over themselves to talk about how crazy, just how loopy this op-ed really is. And it represents sort of an evolution of the NRA's crazy. And Tucker Carlson published it. So there you go. So Wayne LaPierre now spends his time here. This is where he's at. Before I tell you how the NRA and our members are going to stand and fight, capitalized, even the "and" is capitalized, stand and fight politically and in the courts, let's acknowledge, let's just acknowledge that all over this country, tens of millions of Americans are already preparing to stand and fight, capitalized, to protect their families and homes. And if you've been following my Twitter feed, you know how well they're doing with that. These good Americans, and good is not capitalized, but Americans properly is. But they stand and fight is capitalized. Good Americans, not so much. They are prudently getting ready to protect themselves. It has always been sensible for good citizens to own and carry firearms. Sure, why not? It's always sensible. For lawful protection against violent criminals who prey on decent people. During the second Obama term, however, additional threats are growing. Latin American drug gangs have invaded every city of significant size in the United States. Invaded, right? Phoenix is already one of the kidnapping capitals of the world. Whose fault is that? And though the states on the U.S.-Mexico border may be the first places in the nation to suffer from cartel violence, by no means are they the last. The president flagrantly defies the 2006 federal law ordering the construction of a secure border fence along the entire Mexican border. So the border today remains porous, not only to people seeking jobs in the U.S., but to criminals whose jobs are to murder, rape, robbery, and kidnapping. There's no two in there. Our two murder. It's our murder. The jobs are these. The following jobs are now open: murder, rape, robbery, and kidnapping. Those are their jobs. Ominously, the border remains open to agents of Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations. This is just the kitchen sink, right? Numerous intelligence sources have confirmed. They've confirmed that foreign terrorists have identified the southern U.S. border as their path of entry into the country. When the next terrorist attack comes, the Obama administration won't accept responsibility. Why should they? It's probably coming from you guys. Instead, it will do what it does every time: blame a scapegoat and count on Obama's mainstream media as enablers to go along. The heinous act of mass murder, either by terrorists or by some psychotic who should have been locked up long ago, like one of you guys, will be the pretext to unleash a tsunami of gun control, which is capitalized again. So stand and fight and gun control. No wonder Americans are buying guns in record numbers right now, while they still can and before their choice about which firearm is right for their family is taken away forever. Isn't that amazing? What an amazing thing. Which firearm is right for your family? Obviously, whatever, you've got choices, so whichever you choose is presumably right for your family. But what a weird way of putting it. What's right for your family? Ask your doctor if an AR-15 is right for you. I wonder what he'll say. Depends on the doctor, I guess. And whether or not he makes up his own certification. Rand Paul. After Hurricane Sandy, we saw the hellish world that the gun prohibitionists see as their utopia. Straw man much. Looters ran wild in South Brooklyn. There was no food, water, or electricity. And if you wanted to walk several miles to get supplies, you better get back before dark or you might not get home at all. Everyone remembers that everything was exactly like that. It makes you wonder why you guys were so opposed to sending federal assistance, doesn't it? What a weird thing to do. Isn't that sort of what you'd want to call out the militia for? Isn't that what you'd want to get federal troops on the ground for? No, because they're jackbooted thugs. These guys hate everybody, no matter what they do and who they're helping. Helping me? I hate you. I might shoot you. You're an intruder. Get out of here, FEMA thug. Anti-gun New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg has already done everything he could to prevent law-abiding New Yorkers from owning guns, and he has made sure that no ordinary citizen will ever be allowed to carry a gun. Yeah, it's totally right. He even refused to allow the National Guard into the city to restore civil order because guardsmen carry guns. That's probably not the reason, and it was also maybe because they were more necessary elsewhere. Meanwhile, President Obama is leading this country to financial ruin, borrowing over $1 trillion a year for phony stimulus spending, in quotes, and other payoffs for his political cronies. This guy is about guns. He's into this. He's against puppy mill legislation, by the way, as it turns out. He's border fence now. He's against stimulus. Stick to the guns. Literally, please. So nobody knows if or when the financial or the fiscal collapse will come. Or how do we even get to this? Wait a second. President Obama is leading this country to financial ruin, borrowing over $1 trillion a year for phony stimulus spending. When did we get $1 trillion stimulus package? I thought we had that fight already. And the whole thing was, no, you can't have $1 trillion. It has to be, all right. So, but now he's doing $1 trillion a year. And, okay, so it's all payoffs to his political cronies. Nobody knows if or when the fiscal collapse will come. But if the country is broke, there likely won't be enough money to pay for police protection, and the American people know it. Dun, dun, dun. Where's my music? I know when something needs this, right? Absolutely. This is some story. I mean, talk about leaping from island of crazy to island of crazy. Nobody knows if fiscal collapse will come, except me. And I do know, and it will come, and you need to do something about it. And the American people know it. Hurricanes, tornadoes, riots, terrorists, gangs, lone criminals, criminals that travel in threes, but not quite a gang. Paraplegic criminals with souped-up mobility scooters and machine guns mounted. I don't know what else. Look at this. Hurricanes, tornadoes, riots, terrorists, gangs, lone criminals. That pretty much covers everything. Lone criminals, a couple more criminals, even more criminals than that with bigger weapons, and then just generalized criminality, but also hurricanes and tornadoes. Tsunamis, earthquakes, not in here. This is not comprehensive at all. Lone criminals, criminals who work in pairs, wolves, coyotes, rabid badgers, fruit ninjas. What else is out there? Unbelievable. This guy is out of his mind. Well, anyway, they are all perils that we are sure to face. Not just maybe. We are sure. Each of you is sure to face those perils. Gangs everywhere, right? It's not paranoia to buy a gun. It's survival. It's responsible behavior, and it's time we encourage law-abiding Americans to do just that. Since the election, millions of Americans have been lining up in front of gun stores, Cabela's, and Bass Pro Shops, exercising their freedom while they still have it. They're demonstrating they have a mass determination to buy, own, and use firearms. That they are demonstrating, yes. Millions of Americans are using market forces like never before. What a weird construction. They're using market forces like never before to demonstrate their ardent support for our firearm freedoms. And that tells you a lot about what their agenda really is. I mean, we've been telling you over the past couple of weeks that these guys are about gun sales, not gun rights. This whole thing has been leading to what? The conclusion that millions of Americans are have a mass determination to use market forces. This is getting to be like one of those corporate mission statements, right? If you ever thought it was gobbledygook to be told, we'll help you leverage XYZ across the entire enterprise to create world-class turnkey end-to-end solutions utilizing cloud technology and, and that doesn't make any sense to you. Now the NRA is doing that. We're for guns, we're for gun rights, we're for Second Amendment rights. We think everybody has the right to protect themselves, has now evolved into millions of you are demonstrating mass determination to use market forces like never before to demonstrate ardent support for leveraging firearm freedoms across multiple platforms. That's one of the very best ways we can capitalize, stand, and fight. Inevitably, the anti-gun media and the gun ban lobbies are demonizing the purchase of firearms. They call us extremists because we wonder whether we will be able to buy a semi-auto in 3 years, or even in some states later this year. That's despite the fact that President Obama long ago made clear that he wants to ban them all. He said it. I saw him. I don't really have the tape, but promise you I totally have it. The media try to make rank-and-file Americans feel guilty about buying a gun. The enemies of freedom demonize gun buyers and portray us as social lepers. Well, you are social lepers, but probably for other reasons. I mean, have you ever checked that guy out? Well, anyway, we know the truth. Absolutely. He didn't capitalize truth, thankfully. We know that responsible gun ownership exemplifies what is good and right about America. And I tell you about those responsible gun owners every day, dropping their guns, denying that they fired them. I didn't shoot anybody. I was jumped. Somebody robbed me. I shot myself. Fine. You caught me. Responsible gun owners. They're everywhere. Responsible Americans realize that the world as we know it has changed. We, the American people, clearly see the daunting forces we will undoubtedly face. Terrorists, crime, drug gangs, and the possibility of Euro-style debt riots, civil unrest, or natural disaster. I believe he said this already. Gun owners are not buying firearms because they anticipate a confrontation with the government. Ooh, that's new. Rather, we anticipate confrontations where the government isn't there or simply doesn't show up in time. A new tack. Very interesting, Wayne. To preserve the inalienable individual human right to keep and bear arms, to withstand the siege that is coming, the NRA is building a 4-year communications and resistance movement. 4 years. Interesting. Because to me, the total collapse of government seems like a long-term problem, but for them, it's a 4-year problem. What other problem do they have right now that's going to last about 4 years? Interesting. Well, they're going to do it for 4 years. The enemies of the Second Amendment will be met with unprecedented defiance, commitment, and determination. We will stand and fight. First, we are going to devise legal capability like never before. I'm going to devise myself some legal capability. Hold on a second here. I got it. I have now devised some legal capability. Not like before. This is capability like never before. I fervently hope that President Obama does not get to appoint another anti-gun Supreme Court justice like Sonia Sotomayor or Elena Kagan. But he probably will. And we must meet that challenge. How are we going to meet that challenge? That's an interesting thing. We must meet that challenge. You can't meet that challenge. You can challenge the law, but you can't meet that challenge. And it's not even a challenge. It's actually a right that he's got. His chances of appointing a replacement for one of the 5 pro-rights justices in a 5-4 Heller and McDonald majorities are high. And so are you, Wayne. And there's no doubt that he's going to appoint a huge number of new judges to lifetime positions in the lower federal courts. That means the federal courts are going to get worse and worse. So some cases on which we might have improved our chances of victory by waiting a while are going to have to be brought now. Besides bringing affirmative pro-rights cases... nice job, Pocket, for jumping ahead. That's real helpful. Besides bringing affirmative pro-rights cases, we will also have to litigate against the flood of new anti-gun federal regulations that are coming and against anti-gun laws that are going to be enacted in some of the states. How are all these anti-gun things happening? Could it be that the majority of Americans actually want them to happen? Maybe they happen in numbers big enough to be able to overcome any constitutional objections one day. That would be interesting. But that would be invalid in his view, and he has to fight against it. Well, second, he says, we must strengthen the NRA like never before, i.e. send us more money. We are, and always have been, a genuine grassroots organization. We're so genuine. And never has your membership been more important. Click here to give it doesn't actually say that, but never has the NRA, which is not capitalized here in this one, that's a typo, interesting, been more in need of your support. The national media, with its slanted and inaccurate quote-unquote news coverage of the gun issue, has given the gun ban groups the equivalent of hundreds of millions of dollars of free advertising. That's interesting. You know what else has given us the equivalent of hundreds of millions of dollars in free advertising? You guys shooting each other accidentally. That's free as far as I'm concerned. As long as it doesn't hit me, it's free. Now the threat is even greater. Michael Bloomberg and George Soros are each individually far wealthier than the entire National Rifle Association. All right, I guess that's probably true. When the NRA spends money on political advertising, we have to raise those funds from you. $20, $50, $250, or $1,000 at a time. In the last election, Bloomberg alone spent $16 million, and that doesn't even account for the indirect spending by groups funded by Soros and his fellow billionaires. The hard truth is that due to Bloomberg, Soros, and the rest of their ilk, Jews, the dangers require that we increase the presence all across the country, in Congress, the state capitals, and in your cities and towns. As we stand and fight, the third and most important part of our action plan, only now are we getting to the most important part of the action plan, demands that we organize like never before. Community organizing? That can't be the answer, but he says it is. We got to organize like never before. That's the most important part of all, which we know because in the previous sentence he said it was the most important. Do you dig that? As we stand and fight, the third and most important part of our action plan demands that we organize like never before. That's the most important part of all. That's the most important part of our standing and fighting, which we need to do by organizing. It's very important. It's the most important. It's also the third part of our action plan for standing and fighting. Thanks, Wayne. Proofread much? Every gun owner should be an active member of the NRA, but they're not. By the way, I wonder why that is. Every gun owner should be sure that every member of his or her family is an active member. For most of the last 100 years, a strong NRA has been the indispensable shield against the destruction of our nation's Second Amendment rights. Now, an even stronger NRA, also again not capitalized, is the only chance gun owners have to withstand the coming siege. Siege, I tell you. This begins with remembering to keep your own membership active or reactivate it if it has lapsed. It means reminding yourself, I have a son and daughter who aren't members and should be. It means reaching out to your hunting and shooting friends and personally telling them why it's so important that they join the NRA now. during this time of peril. The NRA is launching a nationwide full-court initiative to urge every gun owner and every non-gun-owning lover of freedom to join the NRA and fight this battle. I will personally be traveling all over America enlisting new members, flying around on a nice private jet, no doubt. We must reach out to the tens of millions of gun owners who are not yet NRA members, to the gun owners who care about their rights and their own rights, but who have been duped by Obama and the national media into believing that the Obama and Bloomberg gun controls, capitalized, will only affect other people. They are naively sitting on the sidelines, imagining themselves immune to the coming siege. Yet, no matter how much I travel, I can't be everywhere. NRA members, though, can be everywhere. We already are. We surround them. They abandoned that line, by the way. The 4 million of us belonging to every community in the United States. We are the largest civil rights organization in the world, and we have been part of the fabric of America ever since 1871. So it is you, proud NRA members, who are key to enlisting new members in the ranks of our army of freedom, not capitalized. NRA Grassroots has always been our association's greatest strength. To compete with Bloomberg and his gangs again, it must be stronger still. Historically, we have been able to rely on volunteers, and I'm going to ask you and need you to answer the call to help throughout the next 4 years. This is one long fundraising message, obviously. Every year, shooting is becoming more and more popular, with more people engaging in the shooting sports for fun. More people are buying guns and trying new disciplines such as 3-gun competition, sporting clays, practical shooting, and so on. It's a fun-sounding situation. As we stand and fight, let's continue to make the shooting sports one of the fastest growing recreational activities in America. As we stand and fight dystopian tyranny, let's have fun. Why don't we? By practicing fighting against pretend dystopian tyranny. What if we can? There's no reason why living in an apocalyptic hellhole has to be boring. Let's make it fun. There are, after all, apocalyptic hellhole games that we could be playing along the way. By doing so and telling others about it, we'll popularize and make gun owning and shooting more mainstream than ever before. That will be even more effective if we remember to invite new people to participate and provide them with the responsible mentorship and guidance that the NRA has exemplified for over 140 years. You and I, of course, know that more and more of those people are going to be shot accidentally, but that's the way it goes. Nothing we can do about that. We can't win the political war if we lose the cultural war. One of the great protectors of the Second Amendment is the popular, active, responsible use of firearms for shooting and hunting. It seems, again, like he just already said this. We don't want America to become like England, where some of that nation's outstanding rifle competitors keep their hobby a dark secret from their neighbors for fear of social disapproval. Is that really so? In addition, also, if you get cancer, you have a 4 million% chance of dying. It's like they don't think that there's telephones to call England or Canada with to ask them whether, Canadian healthcare is really a socialist nightmare, or whether or not there really are, are there really secretive rifle shooters in England? I mean, they show up at the Olympics. How secretive could they be? Whatever. Well, we don't want to become like England because the dentistry there is terrible. I mean, there's a number of reasons why we don't want to be like England, but we like Gideon, for instance. I don't think that we would have any problem with, well, I don't know. Look, Gideon, you can maybe ring in and you can tell us, do you know any of these dark underground shooters who keep secrets from their neighbors? Well, you don't even need to tell us about it, because here in America, we're not going to let the anti-gunners push us into that zone. As I remind people every day, we are the majority. Yeah, well, unskew the majority, I guess. We have so much to be proud of as gun owners, shooters, and freedom lovers. That pride, especially when it's not hidden in the closet, is itself a form of protection for the Second Amendment. We will not surrender. We will not appease. A little more Euro hint there, by the way. Do you get it? Appease. We will buy guns more than ever. Thank you. Thank you. There you go. You just earned your pay there, Wayne. We will buy guns more than ever. We will use them for sport and lawful self-defense more than ever. Why? We will grow the NRA more than ever, and we will be prouder than ever to be freedom-loving NRA patriots. And with your help, we will ensure that the Second Amendment remains America's first freedom. We will stand and fight. Yay! Whatever, man. I don't really know what there is to say about that. This is really not I mean, you can see why people thought that he was going off the deep end here. Robert Best chimes in on Twitter. Good comment here. How does this fit in with blaming entertainment for gun violence? Right? I mean, that's a good question. Every day they've got a new excuse why the guns don't have anything to do with the gun violence. It's everybody else's fault. But he's really just, he's throwing the kitchen sink at us. And this jives with a certain theme among conservatives and Republicans that I've hit on in the past. And I've noticed it locally. I've noticed it nationally. Republicans, conservatives, they campaign like they hate this place. Their whole theme is, America is a doomed hellhole. Vote for me. Put me in charge of the doom and hellholishness of America. Everything, and what this represents here is, and I said it on Twitter earlier today, these guys are so unprepared to compete in a majoritarian democracy that the NRA now pins its hopes to dystopian chaos as an environment and a climate more hospitable to its true agenda than actually preserving a culture, freedom, and rights. It's better if everything just collapses. And it's better if you think everything's going to collapse. We do our jobs, our real jobs, selling guns, better if we tell you America isn't going to last. That America's not exceptional. America's not the shining city on the hill. It is a doomed culture, destined for failure. The only way you can somehow, and then they realize how crazy they're getting, the only way you can help preserve it. Why? It's doomed. It's destined for failure. Yeah, but we could definitely turn it around if we start shooting more of one another. Well, that's not what they said. They said we should be shooting sporting clays in preparation for shooting one another. Except then you missed, if you think that's the case, you missed the strong subtext of the piece. Gangs, criminals, Latin Americans, dark people. Now, they could have guns, and they do have guns. And a lot of them are automatic weapons, as it turns out, when you're talking about the really serious hardcore gang members. And your pea shooters aren't going to do much against them. That's why they, of course, want to have AR-15s. But it is interesting, I guess, that I guess the theory is bunker up, hide on our ranches and in our suburban homes, in our panic rooms in the basements, and wait for Latin American drug cartels to push all the way to where? Connecticut, like, for instance. I guess that's an approach to organizing. I guess that's an approach to standing and fighting. But it's interesting that these guys, I mean, where's the stand and fight when it comes to fighting the gangs and the terrorists? Because so far it manifests itself only in hating the government, which after all is actually our, only possible defense against this stuff, and shooting at exploding targets out in the woods and firing at, targets that are made to look like Osama bin Laden or what have you. But they tend to do this in the safety of their own enclaves. And in some cases now they're going to go build citadels. Where's the standing and fighting? I mean, I guess there's the Minutemen on the border, and we don't really want that either. Because, of course, who do they pick on? This is interesting. I mean, I guess they put the one theory of theirs that they can prove, I guess, by their own actions. I mean, so it's a little bit more of a self-fulfilling prophecy than anything else, is, they keep saying, well, the gun-free school zones just create a place where there are sitting duck targets for maniacs to come and shoot. So here they're raising the alarm now of Latin American drug cartels invading every city in the United States. So there needs to be a wall, there needs to be protection down at the border. So they organize as Minutemen, and they go down there and they fight. But who do they shoot? When they do find people and shoot them, who do they go after? They go after individual, dehydrated, starved migrants tromping through the deserts, just hoping to make it to someplace where they can find water and not die. Those guys they're targeting, tracking, and shooting. My question is, when are they going to actually take on Mexican drug cartels? All right, let's see. Have we made it back? Yes, I see my levels moving now. It looks like it's better. That was an interesting trouble spot. I got like a shock from the mic there. Not bad, just a little zap, and then everything kind of went quiet. And I wonder what was going out over the air, because I looked at the levels, and it looked like I was getting, 3 or 4 bars of output level, but it was constant. It was not moving along with my voice, which normally happens, which I hope doesn't mean that it was sending out some kind of annoying screech for that long. But that's what that sort of looked like for a minute. So, hey, sorry about that, folks. But yes, it's tough to do these shows more or less solo and without a big team of engineers and producers all in one place. But we are back. And when we left off, we were talking about the craziness of the Wayne LaPierre, not only the op-ed, but the crazy vision of America that that he shares with Republicans and conservatives in general. That America is doomed, and it's so terrible that you have to elect them. And they don't even really promise to save the place anymore. They now just say, now the new prevailing wisdom is, it's going to go to hell, and you might as well have guns so that you can kill everybody for some reason, because everybody's going to try and kill you, or I really have no idea, but they list every possible evil in the world, and they say they're coming to your suburban neighborhood, and they're going. So, looks like now the response is coming in over Twitter. Yes, some annoying screeching noise was in fact going on. It must have been just some tone going out, because the levels were just constant. You could see a square wave essentially going out into your ears. So there's a little physics of sound for you. It's not just us who's noticing that Wayne LaPierre has gone even further off the deep end here. Even Joe Scarborough, who I mentioned earlier, is now into this, but in a strange way. Like I said, he's one of these purveyors of this idea of this false equivalence, that both sides are to blame, that we need to have bipartisan cooperation between the two sides, which both suck equally. And what does he mean when he says they both suck equally? He sent something out today, or he made some comment, and I saw people talking about it on Twitter. I guess on his show today he said, or also tweeted out, that Wayne LaPierre is as extreme in his views as Paul Krugman is in his economic views. Now, that is like, a high art in terms of, the stupid false equivalency thing. Slavish devotion. Is Joe Scarborough's slavish devotion to false equivalency and trolling, as someone else pointed out, as extreme as as he thinks Paul Krugman's ideas on economics are? And as others have pointed out, Wayne LaPierre has no Nobel Prizes in gun safety, or gun death for that matter, whereas Paul Krugman, an internationally recognized economist, has some ideas that differ from internationally recognized dope of no particular significance, Joe Scarborough. But, from his media perch, he sits there and says it's all the same. Now, of course, I'm not aware of how many people have died as a result of Paul Krugman's economics, but surely some radical conservatives would attempt to pin some of that on him. Last time I saw 21st graders economics to death, I cannot recall. But I'm sure that this is pretty much the same thing. Well, it's not the same thing. And Republicans, one thing that Paul Krugman doesn't do is say, we're on the verge of collapse and America is a hellhole. And, we got to prepare to kill one another we have to kill the society in order to save it. Apparently that's where we're going with the NRA guys. And this is really bananas, and bananas in so many new and interesting ways. And it's basically a giant infomercial, this piece. But for what? If you're crazy and think the world is going to collapse, you need to be one of us. You need to send us your money, which won't even be good anyway. It's just script. It's just fiat currency. Rawr. Send us gold. That's where they ought to be doing this. Send us your gold in small bits and pieces here, and we'll basically live a Minecraft existence when the whole world collapses. Not that we're going to be able to communicate with one another anyway, but somehow, I guess, maybe we'll take Kevin Costner post-apocalyptic movies as a model. The Postman will deliver your monthly NRA newsletter telling you what to do and which gangs to shoot. Which gangs roving the streets with guns are the good gangs, and which gun gangs roving the streets are the bad ones. As a rough guide, the white ones are the good ones. I'm sure they'll want you to know. What an interesting approach to life in general. I can say that much. These guys are increasingly paranoid and weird, and of course are increasingly saying, no, we're not paranoid and weird. Unbelievable. And so yesterday I was picking up on this theme as we closed out. I might as well go back to this. Remember that I mentioned free thought blogs, and I was reading the writing of Chris Roda, R-O-D-D-A, Roda, who had written about David Barton, who was out there doing something crazy. He was claiming that gun accidents just didn't happen in the founding era. You remember that? I mean, this is fueling this sort of thing. As not only is America a hellhole, but in the past it was awesome because we had a bunch of guns and they never misfired, and we know that that can't be the case. But he does, in fact, make that claim. According to Chris Roda, he makes the incredible claim that gun accidents just didn't happen in the founding era, saying, I have searched, and in the founding era, I think I've only ever found 2 gun accidents. Now, who thinks they were documenting that stuff for posterity? When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for, excuse me 1 second, I just wanted to tell you that 17 people shot themselves in the colony of Massachusetts. They weren't recording things in the same way, not nearly in the same way. But he says he's searched, and he's only found two gun accidents. And everybody was holding guns back then. You took your guns to church. You were required by state law in some states to take your guns to church. We didn't have accidents because everyone was familiar with how to use them. It's not being familiar that makes it dangerous. The next day on Glenn Beck's web-based TV show, Barton made the same claim after first explaining that the reason people were so familiar with guns back then was that everyone was taught how to use them as part of their education. So Glenn Beck says to him, so everybody grew up with a gun and they taught you how to use a gun. It was part of school. Barton says, that's right. Barton then proceeded to pull out a few letters from the founders to prove that using guns was a usual part of education back in the founding era. And I have no doubt that that's true. What he's basing his other conclusion on is, I haven't found any letters from the founders saying people have shot themselves. But of course, there are probably very few references in the letters of the founders to respiration as well. So now we know there was no breathing going on back then. That's why the founders never passed the Clean Air Act, and that's why it's unconstitutional to do so now. We don't know how the founders breathed. We only know that they didn't actually respirate because there's no documentary evidence of it. Also, so that's pretty good. Robert writes in, a lesser known how George Washington quoted at the time, I cannot tell, I shot my own balls. And it's funny because balls. So there you go. And George Washington's balls at that. So you don't get a chance to talk about that very often. Now, he first quoted, Barton did, a few lines from a letter written by Thomas Jefferson to his 15-year-old nephew, in which Jefferson told his nephew to take a 2-hour break from his studies every day to exercise. The exercise that Jefferson recommended was long walks, and he told his nephew to take a gun with him on his walks. The letter is neither here nor there. It says nothing about teaching the use of guns being a part of school. All it says is that Jefferson thought that walking and shooting were good ways to exercise and relax the mind, and recommended to his nephew that he do that over games played with the ball or other things of that nature, which he warned were too violent for the body and stamped no character on the mind. Shooting, however, not too violent. Barton, who is certainly familiar with rules set down by Jefferson when founding the University of Virginia, since he cherry-picked quotes from these rules when concocting his lie about Jefferson establishing theological schools at the university, seems to have forgotten that Jefferson didn't even allow students to keep guns at the university, let alone making them a part of their education. The university rules, written in 1824, actual history, stated, no student shall, within the precincts of the university, introduce or keep any spirituous or vinous liquors, keep or use weapons or arms of any kind, or gunpowder, keep a servant, horse or dog, appear in school with a stick or any weapon. Interesting. This is some wide-ranging rules. But it's the second letter that Barton read, or paraphrased on Beck's show, that he and Beck flat out lie about. This letter was from John Quincy Adams to his brother Thomas. Adams had left his two oldest sons, George and John, in Massachusetts with an elderly aunt and uncle while serving as foreign minister to Russia, and was becoming concerned about George, whom he was hearing from family members was becoming effeminate, lazy, and a discipline problem. George was getting his academic education in school, but Adams wanted his brother, who also had a son, to step in and take charge of George's extracurricular activities. As we'll see in a minute, Barton not only lies about the John Quincy Adams letter that he uses, but even a part of the letter that he selectively quotes actually contradicts his claim that there were no gun accidents in the founding era. But first, watch or read what Barton said about this letter. Barton says, now here's John Quincy Adams. He's overseas, sent there by President James Madison, and he's got 3 kids being raised by his brother Thomas. They're 9 and 6 and 3. That is what he writes back. He says, one of the things which I wish to have them taught as soon as possible, which no man can teach them better than you, is the management of firearms. The accidents which happen among children arise more frequently from their ignorance rather than their misuse of weapons, which they know to be dangerous. He says, I want you to take George, the 9-year-old, out with you on shooting excursions. Teach him to use the musket. I want you to teach him the construction of the musket, the necessity of prudence in handling the musket, and I want him also to learn the use of pistols and exercise him at firing at marks. Now, that's a typical education for a 9-year-old at the time. Beck says, and that's not for hunting. No, that's not for hunting. That's for protection. That's for protection. These guys love to repeat themselves, apparently. Now, here's the unbartonized excerpt from the letter with the parts carefully omitted by Barton in bold, and I'll tell you which those are. He actually writes, one of the things which I wish to have them taught, and which no man can teach them better than you, is the use and management of firearms. Here's the bold part. This must undoubtedly be done with great caution, but it is customary among us, particularly when children are under the direction of ladies, to withhold it too much and too long from boys. The accidents which happen among children arise more frequently from their ignorance than from their misuse of weapons, which they know to be dangerous. Bolded, as you are a sportsman, I beg you occasionally from this time, unbold, to take George out with you on shooting excursions. Blah, 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 blah. In general, let him have as much relaxation and sport as becomes his age, but let him be encouraged in nothing delicate or effeminate, which has its own weird implications, but very interesting. So he takes out the part that it was about a sportsman and says, not for sport. He says it was definitely for protection, but in fact it was quite clearly for sport. And he's quite clearly aware of the level of accidents among kids. And this goes on for quite some time, but you can sort of see where this is going. And in addition to all of this, the writer here at Free Thoughts blog goes and actually does a little bit of this research themselves. I mean, it's harder research than I do on the internet. It's very easy to find gun accidents on the internet. Researching historical documents for gun accidents, something much more difficult, but I guess not all that difficult, because this article offers up a sampling of articles which he found which discuss those very things. From the Pennsylvania Packet, we hear from Weymouth last week that the following melancholy accident happened there as a number of young men were out a-hunting. It says that, a-hunting. A musket accidentally went off. What? No way, they don't do that. By the discharge of which one person was considerably wounded and another by the name of Lovell instantly killed. In which event a promising youth of about 17 was torn from the enjoyment of his parents and friends, who pungently feel the loss. From the Vermont Gazette, Bennington, Vermont, September 3rd, 1787, Monday. Last, a daughter of Mr. Ichabod Allen of this town, aged 11 years, was instantly killed with a pistol by her brother, who was about 6 years old. The particulars of the unhappy catastrophe, as related by the distressed family, the parents being absent when the accident happened, are that the pistol had been loaded extremely heavy a few evenings before by a young man of the family with intent to shoot an owl. That he laid the pistol upon a shelf near the chamber floor, but the little boy, finding where the pistol was laid and having been frequently indulged in snapping and playing with it, found means by setting a chair against the wall and climbing upon the back of it to get the pistol down. Such formalized language for what is essentially a gun accident, but there you have it. He got the pistol down, and unknown to the family, went out to play with it as usual. At the time the girl was killed, she was sitting in a sleigh box before the door, holding an infant in her arms, of all things. The whole charge of the pistol lodged in her body just above the left breast, which put an immediate period to her existence. Flowery language. It is supposed the boy must have been very near her when the pistol went off, as there was nearly 40 shot holes in a space but little bigger than the circumference of a dollar. A solemn warning to all parents and guardians of children not to teach them to use or even so much as to suffer them to play with such weapons before they arrive to years of discretion. From the Massachusetts Spy, Worcester, Massachusetts, October 1st, 1789. At Cape Elizabeth on Saturday, the 5th instant, James Mayo, a child of 2 years old, was shot through the head by his brother, a boy about 12, who was playing with a loaded musket. The jury were of the opinion, the jury were of the opinion that the child's death was accidental. The jury, people were even being charged for this stuff. There's probably records of that. How about that? Another one. From the Herald of Freedom, Boston, February 2nd, 1790. Unfortunate accident. We learn from Shaftesbury in Vermont that a number of small boys were lately hunting when one of them, named Ebenezer Bottom, was pushing a wad into his gun with his finger at the same time that another boy was priming it. The gun discharged, by which accident Bottom was badly wounded in the hand, and John Welsh, son of Mr. Ebenezer Welsh of Norwich, was shot in the body and died a few days after. This affords a melancholy caution to parents not to trust their children with guns till they have discretion to know how to use them. From the Litchfield Monitor, Litchfield, Connecticut, August 17th, 1791. Portsmouth, July 27th. Saturday last, the following melancholy, again, accident happened in the parish of Northampton. A son of Mr. John Page, about 12 years of age, went into the house of a Negro family in his father's neighborhood. The Negro man and his wife were absent and had left 3 or 4 children at home, the eldest about 7 years old. And observing a loaded gun in the corner of the room, he immediately took it into his hands, cocked it, and drew it by the muzzle to the door, when by some accident it went off and discharged its contents of powder, shot, and wadding into his breast and out his back, which put an immediate period to his existence. That's an interesting phrase that they use again. There's more. Litchfield again, May 1793, reporting on an incident in Winchester. On and on and on. And I will put because there's a lot of them, and I'll put the links up in today's podcast post so you can take a look at that stuff too. It's really rather amazing. This is, an awful lot of accidents, and it's just so surprising that this famous historian, whose research is so thorough and not at all slanted or skewed, missed all of that. So weird. I wonder how much of that you can get on the internet. I'm going to search some of that stuff and see if there's not more to be found. There's certainly plenty of examples in that piece. I mentioned earlier on when I was talking with Greg, we got a hodgepodge of stuff here today, but I want to do some tab clearing here towards the end of the week about the Voting Rights Commission and the appointment to it by President Obama of Ben Ginsberg. And I wanted to point you to an article. Again, I'll link to this one too. This is from Ari Berman, writing in The Nation. Obama appoints a controversial GOP lawyer, to say the least, controversial GOP lawyer, to his voting commission. President Obama embraced the cause of voting rights in his State of the Union speech, which he called our most fundamental right as citizens, and spotlighted 102-year-old Deseline Victor, a naturalized Haitian immigrant from Miami who waited 3 hours and had to make 2 trips to cast a ballot. He also proposed a new voting commission headed by lawyers from the Obama and Romney campaigns. Why the Romney campaign? I have no idea. Here's what Obama said. So in the speech, we must all do our part to make sure our God-given rights are protected here at home. That includes our most fundamental right as citizens, the right to vote. And any American, no matter where they live or what their party, are denied that right because they can't afford to wait 5, 6, 7 hours just to cast their ballot. We are betraying our ideals. So tonight I'm announcing a nonpartisan commission to improve the voting experience in America. If it's nonpartisan, why does it have to be made up of officials from both campaigns? It's bipartisan, not nonpartisan, but whatever. It definitely needs improvement. I'm asking 2 longtime experts in the field who, by the way, served as top attorneys for my campaign and for Governor Romney's campaign to lead it. We can fix this, and we will. The American people demand it, and so does our democracy. Unfortunately, Ari writes, Obama's solution was less than inspiring. Another election commission is a pretty tepid response to the magnitude of the voting problems we face. And Romney campaign lawyer Ben Ginsburg is a puzzling choice to be its co-chair. For over 2 decades, Ginsburg has been a top lawyer for the Republican Party, the same party, you may recall, that has led the effort to restrict voting rights of late. Ginsburg helped to lead the 2000 recount effort for George W. Bush. He was forced to resign from the Bush campaign in 2004 after it was revealed that he was also advising the vile Swift Vote Veterans for Truth. In 2006, Ginsburg said, just like really with the Voting Rights Act, Republicans have some fundamental philosophical difficulties with the whole notion of equal protection. Nice guy. And in 2012, he was counsel to the Romney campaign when it absurdly claimed that the Obama campaign was trying to suppress military voters by pushing for early voting for all Ohioans. Does that sound like the kind of guy you want leading a nonpartisan voting commission? More than likely, this commission will go nowhere, as most commissions are designed to do, after all. Commissions in Washington, Ari notes, tend to be where good ideas go to die. Following the 2000 election, the Help America Vote Act created the Election Assistance Commission to help states run their elections. It's become the zombie voting commission, according to the Washington Post. It has no commissioners, no executive director or general counsel. It hasn't met publicly since 2011. Republicans have repeatedly blocked the appointment of new commissioners to try to abolish the agency. Democrats have done little to resurrect it. There's not much the Obama administration can do on election reform without Congress. So here's a modest proposal. Before Congress tries to pass sweeping election reform, how about taking the baby step of getting its own election commission back up and running? And hopefully Obama, in exchange for appointing Ginsburg to his voting commission, can extract the promise from the GOP lawyer to support the expansion, not restriction, of voting rights. Probably not. And then there's an update. Voting rights groups appear split on the voting commission. The Brennan Center for Justice called it an important step, focusing on improving the experience of voters. But the normally mild-mannered League of Women Voters sharply criticized the idea. We were surprised and disappointed that the president did not suggest bold action to ensure that every American citizen can exercise the right to vote. Setting up a commission is not a bold step. It is business as usual. The president could have done much better by pointing to real solutions that in legislation already introduced on Capitol Hill require early voting, set limits on waiting times, provide for portable voter registration, and set up secure online voter registration. Yeah, all of which we hope that a commission would get to, but not one that involves Ben Ginsburg, very likely. That makes it extremely difficult. I mean, why not Hans von Spakovsky while we're at it? These guys have made a career of getting in the way of people's right to vote and doing it for political purposes. Why he's going to, who else was named? I guess we didn't really see that in this article. It wasn't what the article was about. But this just seems like, nonsense to begin with. Really not that cool. And I don't think it's likely to come out all that well. Well, let's see. Oh, one of the things I wanted to bring up today also, since we're doing the hodgepodge thing, I've noted in the post on the front page at Daily Kos that Congress, and this is going to shock you, is not doing anything. Now, I know you're used to their robust activity levels, but they're doing nothing today. That's what's going on. In the House, they've done something really interesting. This is something that sort of a trick that they've been using for a little while. The Republicans, I think, when they were in the minority, they really hated the idea that the House sort of operated on a Tuesday to Thursday schedule, more or less. There was a little bit of activity on Monday, usually dealing with suspension bills, but they were usually out of there by Thursday. Very little Friday activity. Every once in a while, they would have some Friday votes. And they campaigned on the idea that we're going to make the House operate more like a business, because they always think, well, one, they think business does things right, which we know is not necessarily the case. And two, they think businesses do things in a smart way. And three, they think they understand business. On all of these things, we have some serious disagreements with them. But for show, essentially, they wanted more working on Mondays and Fridays. And then what they would do is they would have the House in session, at least a little bit, Mondays through Fridays for 2 weeks, and then take off for a recess on that third week, as opposed to more weeks on but longer weekends, which was the case under the Democratic schedule you tended to see people voting Tuesdays through Thursdays and taking long weekends home in the district, but then it would be, 6-8 weeks between recesses. And now it's sort of a 2 weeks on, 1 week off schedule for the House. But they don't have anything to do, see. In addition to not wanting the government to do anything in particular, Republicans don't actually have any real ideas about what they should be doing. And, of course, they're preoccupied with trying to deal with, the various fallout of postponing the fiscal cliff stuff and dealing with the debt ceiling and trying to get a new agreement in place. So a lot of the work is going on behind the scenes. On the floor, they just haven't got anything to do. So they've got a bill pending for later this week. And it just doesn't do too much. There's just not much substance to it. It is, let me go to the Post here and I'll read the name of what they're working on. I don't even remember the name, but it's basically what they're doing is there's a federal workers' pay increase coming down the pipe. And coming down the pike, or the pipeline, not coming down the pipe, is sort of mixing the metaphors here. But they want to stand in the way of that, and they'll probably get a lot of support among Democrats for that. We need to cut spending, so people who work for the government need to do it for less. So they're going to block the scheduled pay increase with this bill. Now, how long does that take? Raise your hand if you want to block the pay increase. Me? Okay, great. So, voting takes 15 minutes in the House. They got a lot of people. They got to come in from all over the place. But basically, they're going to vote on this bill tomorrow. Why tomorrow? Well, what they're going to do is today they'll adopt a rule for it, as they do for all legislation, except for suspension legislation. They vote on a rule that will govern the debate. How long will the debate be? What amendments will be allowed, et cetera, et cetera. We've been over this before, but just as a reminder, they have to do this. So this is how they've scheduled the balance of the week for themselves. They have a very simple bill about blocking the pay increase. And then they have the rule for the bill. So on Thursday, today, they'll debate the rule. And they'll save dealing with the actual bill for tomorrow. That way, they get to, quote-unquote, work on Thursday and on Friday. Now, how long do you debate a rule? Rules are debated for an hour. So today, they'll debate for an hour about how long will they debate tomorrow. I don't know what the rule is going to be, but more than likely, they probably won't give more than maybe 3 hours to this bill tomorrow. They might not even give it that long, but maybe lots of members want to make speeches about how they're watching the federal pocketbook. But they're going to split this up and basically do what could easily be done in the space of a couple of hours in one day. If you actually put your nose to the grindstone and work, they're going to spread that out over 2 days and say, see, we worked on Friday. That's how hard we're working for you. What about over in the Senate? Over in the Senate, what's on the floor? It's the Hagel nomination. Why is it on the floor? I thought it was being held by Republicans. Answer, it's not. It's being filibustered, but it's not being held. Why isn't it being held? It's not being held, despite the fact that Lindsey Graham said, I'm going to put a hold on this thing. It's not being held because a hold is basically a proxy for a threat to filibuster the motion to proceed on some measure. Technically speaking, of course, a hold can also be a proxy threat for filibustering the underlying measure itself, but then it's just the filibuster. It's not so much a hold, but basically a hold is a warning. Say, I'm going to filibuster something here, and I'm going to cost you people some time on this. Even if you have the votes for cloture, it's going to take you a couple of days to get past me. So, if you don't want to waste a bunch of time, honor my hold. Just don't bring the thing to the floor and and sometimes it's connected to something realistic, like I want more information. You can say, as Republicans are saying now, we don't want to vote on the Hagel nomination because there's more information that we think we need in order to make up our minds. Now, what's really happening here, of course, is they're saying, we don't care what the information is. We've made up our minds. We're against his nomination. But, in order to put some kind of sheen of legitimacy on this, they say, well, we have some information requests pending. And the information requests are dumb. Give us a copy of every speech the guy ever gave and every dollar he ever earned since leaving the Senate, et cetera, some of which might be relevant, some of which probably not, but that's what they're after. So they say, well, we're going to put a hold on these things. Now, when you're talking about legislation, you're usually saying, I want to hold on this because if you don't, I will filibuster the motion to proceed to it. And as you know, it will take 2 days for you to get past my filibuster of the motion to proceed, even if I'm the only one voting against cloture in the end, because in order to get past my filibuster, you have to file a cloture motion, wait a day, essentially, for the cloture motion to ripen, and then you can vote on cloture. And if you succeed in invoking cloture, I can still waste up to 30 hours post-cloture before you ever get around to what? At that point, after the 2 days of filibuster and the 30 hours, you only then arrive on the vote on whether or not to proceed to the bill I was trying to hold. So you can see, 2 days, 3 days, more get wasted just getting around to voting on whether or not to start on the bill. Pain in the neck, so in many cases it pays simply to just say, you know what, we're holding it, particularly if we're holding it because you have some kind of demand that we can actually meet, reasonable or otherwise. One of the difficulties with the demand that they're making about Hagel is we probably can't meet that demand even if we wanted to, even if we thought it made sense. How are we going to know? I mean, basically, you can just sit there. We could give you every speech the guy ever gave, and all it takes. I mean, why does it require honesty from that side? They could just say, "We think there's another speech out there that you're withholding from us," and then the media will print that. We think that Graham says they're withholding something. Democrats deny this. He said, she said, and then we go round and around. And what do you know? Lo and behold, they'll never be able to find that thing that the people who are holding the nomination say would satisfy them because it doesn't exist. You can do that. It doesn't require honesty. It just requires gathering the votes. Now, you can do that on a piece of legislation and stop the motion to proceed on it, but you can't do it with a nomination. Why can't you do it with a nomination? Nominations are executive business in the Senate. Advice and consent on nominations is a Senate role, and they take care of that in a different mode of operation. When they're legislating, they're just simply working as the Senate. They're working off the legislative calendar. When they're dealing with nominations, they move into executive session, is what they call it. And, it's sort of a formalized fiction of sorts, except it serves its purpose when you're dealing with executive business rather than strictly legislative business. They differentiate that. Sort of like, I guess, a similar parallel, even though it's not to do with executive business. You ever see the House resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole rather than the House of Representatives itself? And it's complicated a little bit. I can explain it another time, but it's just another mode of operating. Well, in order to get to executive session, which they have to do if they're going to take up executive business, the Senate Majority Leader makes a motion. I move that we go into executive session. That motion is not debatable. I move that we go into executive session, and they can vote. They can prevent themselves, I guess, from going into executive session, but it can't be debated. And if it can't be debated, it can't be filibustered. Robert Byrd, a couple of years ago, a few decades ago, this is in the 70s and 80s, sort of developed this system. He figured since it's not debatable the motion to go to executive session isn't debatable. He pulled this trick. He said, not only do I move that we go to executive session, I move that we go to executive session for the purpose of debating so-and-so's nomination. That compound motion also not debatable. Not debatable means not filibusterable, and then you vote, and then voila. Not only are you in executive session if your motion carries, but you're in executive session, and the pending business is the nomination you named in the motion. Because you can do this. You can make a motion to go to executive session, non-debatable, you carry the vote, you're in executive session, and then once in executive session, people can filibuster motions to take things up once you're in there. But if you make a motion all at once, when it's non-debatable, poof, you're in executive session and you got the nomination you want before you. That's why there can be no hold per se, because there's no motion to proceed to any particular nomination that's debatable. No debate, no filibuster, no hold. However, They're saying they're holding it anyway. Why are they saying they're holding it? Because they want their troops back home where they face re-election, speaking specifically of Lindsey Graham, to think they're doing something, to think they're holding something. But at the same time, they want them to think it's a hold and not a filibuster. It's been hilarious watching the Republicans in the last couple of days sort of insist that they're not filibustering. We're not going to block it, or we are going to block it, we're going to hold it. There's no hold available. Well, we're going to block it anyway. Well, then you're going to filibuster. No, we're not going to filibuster. Don't call it that. Apparently, the Republican theory right now is it's not a filibuster if we think we're going to lose. That is to say, oh, well, we're not filibustering it. We're not going to kill the nomination because eventually we're going to lose, you see. So that's not a filibuster. It's a filibuster when you win. Now, it's a filibuster when you lose, too. It's just the loser of a filibuster. So good luck with that one, guys. I don't think that's going to work out too well. All right, we're wrapping it up for today. Armando is not available to follow me up, and neither is my music. There it is. I had to reboot the soundboard in order to get the outro music going as a result of our technical glitch from earlier in the show. We got a lot of glitches, but we're working it out. Keep listening. Thank you very much for tolerating what the glitches that go along with a one-man show. What can you do? We'll try and keep the interest level up out there with more of this hodgepodge. There's so much going on, and so many of these stories are interrelated. It's fun for me to try and sew them all together. And tomorrow, Friday, we'll see what kind of show we can put together from the rest of the tab dump. There's some interesting stuff out there, including a piece from the Buffalo Beast. That's the blogger who once got the governor of Wisconsin on the phone to talk to the fake David Koch for 20 minutes. He's got a nice looking list, the 50 most loathsome Americans. That's got to be funny. That'll be entertaining, and that'll carry us through tomorrow. Thanks for listening. I'm David Waldman, Kagro X, wrapping up today's Kagro in the Morning Show. Stay tuned for more.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.